Hi, everyone. My name is Jill Oberski. I'm a PhD candidate in the entomology graduate program at the University of California, Davis. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm excited to welcome you to the series of conversations about mental and chronic illness in academic professional development. This project is supported by the UC Davis Grad Pathways Institute for Professional Development through the Professors for the Future program. Today's topic is going to be university logistics and disability accommodations. Basically, we'll be discussing how managing an unpredictable condition is different for students, postdocs, job applicants, and faculty. Many of the offices and pieces of paperwork and so forth that we're going to talk about today are specific to UC Davis, but hopefully they'll be a great jumping off point for anyone else to consider when starting a conversation with their own institution. I spoke with several offices at UC Davis, namely the Student Disability Center, Disability Management Services, and Academic Affairs, to get a sense of how those divisions differ and cooperate. But my guests were hesitant to be recorded, so I've packaged that information and created a brand new write-up. I wrote this presentation in the format of an interview, but just consider it a performance, basically. This isn't the same as the conversation I had with official UC Davis folks. Reading with me today is Mia. Can you introduce yourself quick using your own voice?
Sure. My name is Mia Lippy. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a graduate student researcher at the University of California, Davis in the entomology graduate group.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So let's get started.
So, can I get an overview of what the different departments at UC Davis cover? Of course, this is going to vary at other institutions, but I know at UC Davis, there's the Student Disability Center, otherwise known as the SDC, Disability Management Services, which is DMS, and Academic Affairs too.
Yeah, so Disability Management Services is under the umbrella of Human Resources. So they work with anyone who has an employment relationship with the university. So that includes volunteers, academic employees, faculty, TAs, graduate student researchers, and any staff employee. Also fellowships, fellowship recipients. So we help with accommodations in regards to those jobs.
Cool. What about the Student Disability Center?
The SDC works with students, but all kinds of students, undergrad, grad, professional. Their primary focus is on academic accommodations, but truly most things on the UC Davis campus are considered academic programs. So that said, there's a separate office for things like housing accommodations. Those go through housing and dining. So everything that concerns students goes through the Student Disability Center. But if you have two roles on campus, like a graduate student who's also employed as a TA, you would probably get your accommodations through both the SDC and Disability Management Services.
Gotcha. And then there's Academic Affairs. Is that just for faculty?
Basically, yeah, Academic Affairs is also under the umbrella of Human Resources, and it's like the human resources for all academic faculty. So the Central Campus Office Personnel Unit, they're involved in recruitment, appointment, advancement, any disciplinary things that need to happen, but they sometimes get involved with academic related disability accommodations, especially if there are other HR related things in that situation, like family connections or other special requirements that get more complicated. Academic Affairs is also in charge of leaves, like for sabbaticals and medical leaves, disability leaves, and parental leaves for people who are having kids specifically. They have a really great work-life program for that to help you balance those two things. And they also have training programs that teach faculty and your department chair and stuff exactly what Academic Affairs does and what they offer.
That's great. And how do postdocs factor into all of this? They're paid employees with contracts, but they're not exactly students.
Yeah, so postdocs, just like faculty, usually fall under academic affairs and disability management services in their employment sense. But a few types of appointments are overseen by the grad studies division. So generally speaking, because they're university employees, disability management services would help them.
Okay. How about people who aren't yet a part of the university, like prospective students and visiting professors and faculty job applicants?
Yeah, so prospective students and students just attending events on campus actually can get accommodations too, and they should talk to the Student Disability Center. But that might be different at other campuses, even within the UC system. But the SDC here at UC Davis is under student affairs, but it might be under academic affairs or even diversity offices at other schools, which are under lots of different places.
Okay, thanks. I'd love to hear more about job applicants, like what sorts of accommodations can be granted to people who are in the process of interviewing. For example, I know that faculty job interviews are really intense, typically over the span of a couple days, meeting after meeting, including meals. One faculty I know had to request breaks in order to go pump because she was breastfeeding at the time of the interview. So yeah, what accommodations are there for applicants visiting campus?
Yeah, so there are a bunch of possibilities that are listed on the DMS website, which I'll link in the show notes. But some of them include having the printed interview questions ahead of time, adjust the lighting, making sure the location is physically accessible, maybe scheduling the interview at a certain day or time. They could also bring an attendant with them to the meeting, like an extra person, or request a scent-free environment or something like that. And of course, there are the more standard services like assistive devices and interpreters. But you can also make special requests, and they might allow for those too. But if they do happen to be taking care of a child or breastfeeding specifically, there's a program at UC Davis that covers the cost if they need to bring their child to keep them close or pay for childcare or something like that. So bringing super important people along is definitely something that can be discussed.
Great, that's awesome. Can we talk a little bit about taking leaves, like disability leave? What does that look like for students versus faculty and staff?
So students can do what we called the Planned Educational Leave Program, or PELP, for one academic quarter. And then if they have a disability and they need to be on PELP for longer, then the SDC can do that as an accommodation. There's also situations when the student needs to go on leave in the middle of the quarter, for instance, and then the Student Disability Center would probably help with that too. Any sort of exception to policy, basically. To go on PELP in the first place, students just have to file a form with the registrar. It doesn't have to involve disability offices in any way. Postdocs and faculty at UC Davis can use sick leave for illness or medical appointments or childbearing, disability, and also illness or bereavement of their close family. So that's what's called family and medical leave, kind of humorously abbreviated as FML. For postdocs, you're eligible for 12 days of sick leave per 12-month appointment. That's paid sick leave. You can also get other leave for childbearing and that sort of thing, but mainly you have to talk to your faculty mentor or just whoever's your direct supervisor in order to arrange that sort of thing, because they're the one in charge of your paycheck. Then for faculty, they don't accrue sick leave over time like other academic staff. So the process for faculty leave starts with their department. Departments themselves have the ability to approve leaves that are 7 days or less. If it's over 7 days, but less than 30, then the dean has to approve it. And if it's over a month, then it goes all the way to the vice provost. And early career faculty are eligible to take 2 quarters of pay leave if need be. After 10 years of service, then faculty are eligible for a full year of paid leave. And it builds from there, basically. Also, what many employees do in cases of emergency medical leave is sign up for short-term or long-term disability. So that first part of taking leave initially is often just a starting point to support the employee until that disability kicks in and they can come back to work in a less intense sort of way. There's also possibilities for leave extensions if you need it. For example, if you sign up for disability insurance, when you sign up for benefits, that's when you would do that. You'd be granted extended leave, but then not necessarily be paid by the university. Likely only you'd be paid disability benefits, if that makes sense. Probably better than nothing, though.
So obviously there's a huge difference between taking a year off for medical leave and taking a year off for sabbatical. But how do those differ logistically?
Well, all leaves are processed through the same online portal called My Info Vault. If it's a medical leave, usually the healthcare provider has to sign a form saying that the employee needs the leave. So they certify that the individual is actually unable to work. Of course, that isn't needed for taking sabbatical, but you use the same online portal system to make that request.
Okay. Is it common for people to max out their paid leave?
Not for a whole year. Oftentimes, paid leave is just for a few weeks or sometimes a quarter. And like I said, it's sometimes a holdover until disability kicks in. It just depends on what's going on and how complicated the situation is, basically. But those medical details are usually kept on file at a lower level and won't accompany the leave request all the way up the approval levels. So the request will just say medical leave forms on file with so-and-so person.
So that kind of medical leave covers all physical and psychological emergencies. You just need a healthcare provider signature.
Yeah, that's right. The treating providers certifying that they're unable to work is like the key phrase.
How does that relate to planned educational leave or PELP for students? Do you need a doctor's signature to do that? Or can you say, I'm taking leave for my own private reasons?
Yeah, if a student is asking for an accommodation to extend the 1 quarter PELP, then they need to have a letter from a clinician supporting it. But even though that paperwork is necessary, it's pretty flexible what's accepted because in a lot of situations, taking a leave is the best accommodation possible for someone to, be back in a position where they're going to thrive with their education. So something related to this is what's called a minimum progress waiver, which allows a student to continue in school, but allows them to do it part-time rather than like a full load of credits.
Right, okay. So the general planned educational leave at UC Davis is just something you can sign up for by yourself that doesn't require medical sign off.
Yeah, but if they get SDC accommodations, undergrads can even take multiple quarters off. But in graduate and professional schools, things are more complicated depending on what the program looks like, coursework, and so on, and where you are in the process.
That makes sense. Probably something you would have to coordinate with the chair of your graduate group and or your PI if you were a graduate student or a postdoc then. So let's say you're a grad student or postdoc or faculty member and you took a medical leave. Then you have to transition back into work when you come back to work. How does that work?
Academic Affairs has a form called a return to work form that their health provider fills out that says this person is able to come back to work now with or without accommodation, maybe without restrictions, like they can just get back to work, or the doctor might say they have some limitations and the duration of those limitations. So that's when the employee should work together with their chair or supervisor, as well as DMS, to find accommodations that work.
Okay, I was doing some reading on this. So if I get it right, basically everyone talks to everyone else in human resources. DMS connects with academic affairs and the employees department. Plus they reach out to the leaves department where they do the behind the scenes work to put the employee on leave status. That return to work letter might have restrictions or limitations that are permanent or ongoing, but could also say temporary for a certain length of time. So then there is a sort of back and forth between the departments to go over what their job description is, what their duties are, and what accommodations would help them return to work. It's really an interactive, ongoing conversation about what will work because they want something that will work for the employees so they can safely return and be able to be successful. And they want it to work for the department too, of course.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So the dialogue with DMS is ongoing because it might change. Like if it was temporary limitations for like 3 months, DMS will probably want a 3-month update to see what has happened. Are they continuing or maybe they've improved? And so accommodations could change too. DMS is the mediator, and then it's kind of seeing what the person wants and needs and what the department is able to accommodate based on their essential job functions, and then trying to find a happy medium. So all sorts of things that could help them, like assistive technologies, and a lot of times it might involve some work from home or remote work.
So throughout that process, are the details of, say, said medical condition private to the department? Are they private to DMS or who knows what?
In general, all of the university units don't need the diagnosis. So they just need what the limitations are. What is the person having difficulty doing on the job? Is it concentrating, focus? This is also important because the same diagnosis impacts different people differently. So what really counts is the limitations, and what the department hears about is the limitations. DMS keeps everything super confidential, but it's also possible that some limitations themselves are really super specific. Like maybe they could give away the diagnosis if you read the whole list. So if they're that detailed, then DMS will probably meet with the employee first and go over the limitations to determine what information the employee is comfortable with before sharing that whole description with the department.
Okay, gotcha. From the broadest perspective, what are the most common accommodations that DMS arranges for people? Is it basically the same list on the DMS website we mentioned earlier?
Yeah, and that'll be linked. That's a good general one, but I think the most common is actually just taking leave. DMS might recommend that the department provide a period of leave so the person can heal and come back. But we also use accommodations like assistive technology, like dictation software and screen reading software, and a mobility assistance shuttle, both for longer term or shorter term. And sit stand desks, but actually, a lot of departments are just implementing sit stand desks for everybody. So we wouldn't do it as an accommodation if it's just becoming a standard in their department, for example.
Hmm. Yeah, but having that list of possible accommodations, I think, is really helpful because people don't necessarily know what's out there or know what they might find really helpful unless they've seen an example to get an idea. Then they can take that example to DMS and include it in those conversations and negotiations that they're having with their department. For this ongoing conversation, who from the department is part of that conversation? I figure if it's for a job applicant, it's going to be the search committee or the search committee chair more specifically. What about if there is a new faculty being onboarded?
So for a new faculty that just accepted the job, that's going to be most likely handled by the department chair. They might say, here are some things I need, or I have some limitations, and then the department might contact DMS if they need some assistance. But I think in most cases, the department will be pretty accommodating, and if there's pushback of some kind from the department chair or people feel that there is discrimination happening, then maybe at that point they would involve DMS. I asked my department's chief administrative officer, and she sounded pretty surprised that a new hire would make DMS their first step to address the situation.
Hmm. But visiting disability services first might also be a safer, more comfortable way to start the conversation for some people.
Hmm.
I guess the last things I want to ask about are how does medical leave impact the tenure clock? Do accommodations extend that tenure clock? Like I know there's the work life program. If you have a baby, you can get an extra year or something. What does that look like?
Yeah, there's actually a really specific policy about that at UC Davis, and it's called stopping the clock, but it's really more extending the clock. The first reason is childbearing or child rearing. The second one is a serious health condition, including disability or bereavement. So that's pretty significant. And the third is some significant circumstance outside one's control.
Great. The academic personnel manual has this policy and the other one, so I'll be sure to link those in the show notes, although they're exclusive to UC Davis, of course. I think UC Davis is really up there in terms of support mechanisms for folks going through the advancement process.
Yeah, it's not perfect, but definitely better than a lot of universities. They even have sample language to use for supporting deferrals and postponements, childbearing, etc. So even those things don't end up being described negatively in any letter that someone is writing. Any additional time on the clock for your tenure clock is not a negative thing. Academic affairs doesn't look at the time it took. They just look at the body of work that's required for tenure, and departments should too.
Okay. One final question, I guess. How much pushback is there typically from departments in terms of negotiating accommodations and extensions? Are department chairs resistant to providing support? Are they generally pretty willing to adopt things?
I think generally the departments want to help the faculty member. DMS gets a lot of people who are referred by their department to talk about solutions, but sometimes the question comes up from departments about if accommodations are temporary, like they can offer an arrangement for a temporary amount of time, and we have to remind them that arrangements are temporary or permanent, just to clarify that. And academic affairs does have regular presentations and workshops it gives to department chairs about how to manage the accommodation process and other issues that they have to deal with as chair. Almost every chair is new to being chair, right? Because it's a rotational leadership role every 3 to 5 years. So it's academic affairs' job to make sure that chairs know who to contact in all kinds of situations.
And for students, Are departments pretty willing to coordinate accommodations?
Generally, departments are very supportive. And if you're an undergraduate, it might not be really noticeable. They might talk with their advisor, but that's about it. Even when you get into graduate and professional schools, there's still a lot of student resources out there that apply, even though you're older and working. The issue is only when a student is out so long that their academic program is impacted. And that's really rare, and the SDC spends a lot of time on those cases. But the general consensus among the disability and HR folks I talked to is that the general support is absolutely there, that the instructor and everybody is on the same team with the students looking for a successful outcome.
Great. Thanks so much for presenting these resources with me.
Yay, thank you.